Hello, I'm Darlene the artist, and I wanted to share with you this little piece that I thrifted and upcycled. I've always used my artistic talents to find useful items in the trash that I can upcycle. I don't always pull things from the trash, sometimes from the side of the road or thrifted. If you're a person that likes to do this, then watching some of my tutorials will probably bring you inspiration. And this is the finished product, and I had found some molds that I really loved. Now I do have some of my own style, which you'll kind of see throughout my art and my pieces that I've turned them around, but I don't always use that. If I see vision for a piece that I would want to make something more on trend or something interesting out of it that might go in a different style or household, then I'll do that too. It's just kind of whatever I can do to save the piece and make it enjoyable for somebody to enjoy it again and keep things out of the landfill. That's the main thing. So let's go on with how I put all this together.
I was really in need of a coat hook at my house. I kept laying things, coats, purses around. Found these at one of the thrift stores for $4.99. And I thought, well, it's pretty good condition, Really interested in what the colors were and whatnot, but the piece was good. So I started with some black, took off the hardware. I did have two of them. So this is like a multi-surface paint that is pretty good for a lot of different crafts. It seems to stick pretty well to things, and I really like it. It's not like super shiny, but it does stay a little glossier. Now here I can put my own designs on with this air dry clay. These are fondant molds and work very well with it. I'll have a description to all these things down below for you. So now I will put just some cornstarch in there to help that release and press a piece of clay into it. I always find these to be like pretty satisfying to press into. So you just get in there real good, kind of wipe it off with your thumbs. You don't want it to be like super thick. And then kind of take the excess off. And then just like gravity, sort of pull it out of there carefully, carefully. Not to touch it too much because you don't want to lose, all the impression on there. And then I'm kind of see where I want it to go. Looks good. Get out my Eileen's tacky glue, which is great because it's non-toxic and easy to use. Now I want to glue these down while they're still wet so that when it dries, it'll dry like right onto it. Air dry clay does shrink quite a bit, so you kind of got to be careful when you're doing longer pieces or things that are side by side because you're going to have some gaps. But you can always fill that in with more air dry clay and let it air dry. Just keep adding to it, as much as you want. I got my little wings, my bat wings. I think this is actually a kitty, but I think it can also be a bat. So we're just gonna say that. I'm kind of a gothy girl, so I would have this type of thing up, all the time, or if you're a little witchy and you want to do like a cottage core kind of look, you can add some of these little pieces into your house to kind of add some little bit darker details, little witchy woman. But those are easy to take up and take down, for holidays too. If you like to decorate for holidays, it's a good little Halloween project have going on. Kids can each have their own bat. So you want to get it nice and even in there so it doesn't have too many highs and lows and doesn't have any holes when you pull it up. And if you can't get all the stuff off around the sides, you can always kind of use a little X-Acto knife to clean it up or use your finger. There we go. Get my glue. I don't need a ton of glue, just enough to kind of hold it on there. And this air dry clay, it takes a couple of days to dry enough to get ready to paint it. But once it's on there, you can kind of, shape it however you want it, move it around. I would suggest with the air dry clay to make sure you're, putting it up against something that's kind of holding the back of it, because air dry clay is just it's not like resin or something like that where it's more resilient. It can break off really easily. So, you always want to be careful about like dropping your project or something like that. You could really break it. But so I had a little rose mold and did that same deal with the pressing and whatnot. And then I've let this dry for, I don't know, probably a few days. And then I'm just going to add that same black paint over the top of it. I think I added several coats, mostly because I feel like the paint really adds a lot of stability and durability to the air dry clay. And you're going to see in this video too, as I go along, I think I painted this like a couple of times because I didn't really like the way it turned out, or I didn't care for the colors. And then I went back in and redid it. And then I let it dry. I use a lot of these little craft paints. They're usually pretty good for these types of projects. Especially on small projects, if you've got to do like a couple coats of something, it's not like a big deal, like you're adding a lot. I think if you use higher pigmented colors, so now I'm highlighting your that black coat should be dry underneath, and I'm dry brushing, which is where I just put some white on the brush and kind of wipe it off. And then just am touching the raised areas, keeping that black, the parts that are recessed, a nice black color. And that way that'll highlight all those areas, and I can put some color on that. And it'll look really bright. If I just painted on the black, then you wouldn't have as bright of colors as you do when you put the white on. The one that's there to the that's blue. I did not like what I did on that, so I did paint over that. Started over basically. I didn't like what I had done because my colors were too muddy. I got too much in the cracks. And this happens with acrylic paint, it's really nice because, you just paint back over it and do it again. And something like this, it can look like having lots of layers helps protect the clay that I put on there. It also kind of can give it a more aged, textured look. So I like all that. I always find it really satisfying to dry brush on the top of that. So then all the 3 dimensions pop out and it looks so cool. So then I did all 3 of these and then I let that dry. And if you do get some down in the cracks, you can always go back with your black and a small brush and kind of get your dark areas back in again. If that happens, sometimes. So then I just thought, well, now we'll go ahead and add the color. And you really can see, because in this clip, you can see the muddy one there next to it and see how different the paint behaves when it's going over the white. You just have a much more crisp and brighter color when you've put in the white background. It just really makes the colors a lot more poppy. You can see them here too. I'm blending this blue and this purple kind of together. So there's sort of almost like 3 colors that are happening. I mean, I think the blending and figuring this stuff out, you can paint over things a couple of times and sometimes it can feel frustrating, but I do find it relaxing and I just kind of keep messing with it. If there's something you don't like, you can just kind of go, right back over it again. If you needed to wait for it to dry and add more white again or to highlight it. But I think at this point, I was really liking what I'm doing here. So even though I thought these colors were super pretty, was feeling that there wasn't enough contrast between the bat and the roses and the background. So I did decide to go ahead and uh, let this dry, and then I started painting the background black again. And you'll see in this next clip. Uh, you can see the one in the back there is painted, and now I'm going back in. And I do think that that made it pop a lot better than having the blue. Although, who knows, in somebody else's opinion, they may have loved having more blue too. So that's the thing as an artist, is like you're always kind of constantly shifting and changing and standing back and looking at it and deciding, you know, is this working? Is this not working? And it's all up to you. It's all up to what you like, and you can ask other people too, especially if it's something that's for them. But this particular piece happened to be for me, so I was like, well, let's just go ahead and make it how I want it. Now I highlighted the bat and the face of the cat and the roses with a little bit of white, dry brush, and I'm loving it. And I have some gold that is an acrylic that I put on that plate, and now I'm just going to dry brush that onto the area around the cat, because that makes it look more like a Victorian frame. And I'm in love with the Victorian era and anything goth, gothy and that type of thing. I'm the original goth girl from the 80s. My Doc Martens on. And here's the finished piece with some of my other art collectibles, things I've thrifted, put together, found, saved. You'll see links to those down below if you are interested in any of those items.